going to be taking you through a bit of a methodology that I've pioneered at Higher Landing to help you to figure out what your worth or your value is, and apply it in both your life as well as your career. So when you think about why we lack confidence, I mean, aside from the obvious reasons of COVID that might have resulted in you losing your job or between jobs, you're stuck at home, and there's just this nagging kind of feeling of almost depression that can set in, and that can really sap our confidence. But one of the things that I have realized is that the way to get your confidence back is really three steps. Number one, you have to know yourself. Number two, you have to believe it. And then the last thing you do is you have to share it. And what has happened, and I know that a lot of women struggle with this, is that they're afraid to share themselves with the world. And that's a really loaded question. That's a really loaded issue. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to provide some insight as to how to overcome this. So when you think about some of the traditional reasons outside of COVID that we struggle with self-worth, I mean, mainly it's because we don't believe in ourselves, or we don't know who we are, or worse, we don't accept ourselves. It's really important to understand that, it's one thing to know who you are and not make apologies for it, but it's another thing to actually own it and make sure that you're not constantly apologizing for whoever it is that you think you are. So self-acceptance is very much tied in with self-love. And I know that love is not a word that is used often in careers or in the workplace. And I really think that it needs to come out of the closet. Another reason that we struggle with ourselves is because we're often comparing ourselves to others. I know that in the work that I do, a lot of people say, oh, I just wish that I could be like so-and-so. And it's like, you know what, forget it. Every single one of you is extraordinary. You have a purpose, you have passions, and you were put on the planet for a reason. And your job is to figure out what that reason is and then go for it. So I really want to encourage you to pinch yourself the next time you start thinking about somebody else's path. That is their path. It's not yours, and it's not meant to be yours. So that's a really, really big issue that we struggle with. Another reason that we struggle with self-worth is that we think we don't matter. Well, you guys, every single one of you matters. Another reason, we don't feel good enough, or we don't feel smart enough. I don't know if you were like me in school or in university, but I was always afraid to put up my hand. And even in public forums, I still am to some degree. But the reason is that, and I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but it's because I was afraid somebody might laugh, or I would say something silly, or I would look stupid. And I know that seems ridiculous, because whatever you say, somebody else is probably thinking the very same thing. But these are just patterns that we play in our minds that we really have to readjust. Another reason, we feel like we don't fit. Or I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but there's some people that really feel like imposters. I know I've gone through a lot of my life until I've started creating and teaching this work, feeling like I just didn't fit, feeling like I was an imposter. I call it imposter syndrome. And it's because you're not on purpose. Once you figure your purpose and your value, and you start living it, suddenly you realize that you do belong. Another big reason that we struggle with self-worth is that oftentimes, and I see this a lot in my work, is that our identity has been tied up in our job titles or what we do. So then what happens is when those go away, so we lose our jobs, or we move along, we retire, whatever that situation is, suddenly we lose all of our connections, and our phone stops ringing. We don't get emails anymore. And suddenly our self-worth just plummets, because we think we are no longer relevant. And then the main reason for that is because your whole identity has been tied up in something external to you. And what's really important is that you understand that your self-worth is inside of you. It's part of your DNA. And nobody can dig that out of you except you. Nobody knows your DNA. Nobody knows your value like you do. And so I'm hoping that I can provide you with some tools today to help you to dig that, to unwrap that. Another reason we struggle, we're often afraid of getting rejected, or somebody's going to judge us, or we just don't trust that we have anything relevant to say. And this is a big one that I've heard of, especially with COVID, is, your people have been passed over for jobs or for promotions, or they're even afraid to apply for a job because they think they don't have the credentials. You guys, we're in a world right now of career transformation. And that's a whole other topic I'm happy to talk to you about. And what that means is that within 10 years from now, 30% of jobs as you know them today are going to be gone. So the number of jobs that are becoming redundant are in the millions. Now, the good news, the other upside of that is that new jobs are coming onto the force. So what that means is that whatever job you hold now is probably going to look a whole lot different a few years from now. And you might not even have the same job. I mean, before, you have something that's really interesting that you should understand is the shelf life of skills, hard skills, has gone from 30 years to now 6. That means that whatever it is that you've learned, you've studied in school, is going to be irrelevant, and you will require retraining of something new within 6 years. Now that's pretty scary, but this is the whole new world that we are facing. And that in itself can be soul sucking. It can rip our self-confidence away. So I'm going to talk to you about this whole notion of career security replacing job security. So I'm going to get back to that. So the one thing that is really important is that you can't know your worth until you know your value. So what is your value? What does your value mean? And a lot of times in my work, a lot of people connect their value to what they did in their last job, or what they do professionally or at work, or, I'm a mother, I'm a caregiver, I am a teacher, I am an engineer, whatever that might be. And you guys, you have to understand those are all just titles that are external to you. You have to understand that your value it follows you around like a shadow. It's just that nobody has ever really what is following us. Your shadow, your value, will never leave you. You were born with it. And so rather than trying to run away from it, because you cannot extract your value away from you. It will follow you wherever you go. So rather than trying to run away from it or fight it, why don't you just get paid for it and learn to embrace your life and enjoy and identify with your value, because you guys, that is why you were put here. So ask yourself, what value do you bring to others? Your value has been with you since the get-go. One of the great questions I love to ask my clients is, can you think of a time in your life or your career where you might have gotten in trouble for something, where if the same situation were to be repeated, you would do the same thing again? So if you can think of something that is probably that you would repeat, that was probably your value screaming to get out. So it's really important that you understand, like, your value isn't going to go anywhere. And this is why a lot of times, people will take jobs that are very misaligned to them just because they can do them. They get desperate. Oh, I need a job. Okay, fine. Well, I'll tell you, you will only be able to keep that job for a certain period of time and be somebody that you're not until suddenly something's going to happen. And usually what happens is we end up getting in trouble because it's our value that's trying to come out. But if you are working somewhere for somebody that doesn't appreciate your value, they're paying you to do something else that, yes, you signed up for. Well, then don't complain, because that is what was important to them. And one of the things that I encourage our clients to do is something called IPs. Now, IP stands for, in your world, it might stand for intellectual property. In my world, it stands for the 2 most important questions to ask anybody in any important conversation. job interview, important family conversation, any kind of conversation. I stands for what's important to you, and P stands for what are your pain points. So if you don't know someone's IP, it becomes near impossible for you to sell yourself. And as well, this is really especially true in jobs, because oftentimes we try to sell ourselves on the basis, oh, I'm great, I'm this, I'm wonderful, when you don't have a clue as to what the employer's IP really is. So don't be out there selling yourself to anybody, whether it's at work, social, home, wherever, until you know what their pain points are. Because the only reason that you should be hired, if we're talking about your career, is to solve one of their pain points. So I have seen numerous people actually have jobs created for them because they have identified somebody's IP and they come up with an idea to sell themselves on it, to solve that pain point. So, and what they're doing is they're demonstrating their value. So we're in a world right now, you guys, where this is probably one of the best times ever in history to have a job created for you. But the only way to do that is to sell your value, not your skills anymore. Skills are becoming a dime a dozen. Plus, they're becoming redundant. So you can't, rather than constantly being a permanent student, find out, first of all, what your value is, and then seek opportunities where you can get paid for demonstrating it. So the other thing, too, that's really important is, a job will be ripped away from you in a second. Understanding your value stays with you for life. It's the only constant that you will have to glom onto, which is especially important in these chaotic COVID times that we're in right now. So when you understand your value, suddenly the world looks a little bit rosier, and it's easier to get up in the morning because we know that we have a purpose. So when it comes to, a lot of people say, okay, well, what's my value? How do I figure out my value? So we do a lot of our workshops and programs are based on this very thing, helping people to discover their value. And it's really hard to do in just an hour. You pretty much can't. But as an example, just for today, ask yourself how you might have served others. It doesn't matter if it's in your personal life, professional life, social life, family life, whatever. It doesn't matter. So how have you consistently served others? What is it that you have a consistent track record of doing? Have you always been the one that's made others look good? Have you been the one that's wanted to calm everybody down and create harmony? Have you been the one that's going to crack a joke and break the ice and make others laugh? Are you the one that makes people feel good? Are you the one that's always resolving relationship issues? Or are you the one that is building relationships? Are you the one that's going to be always keeping the peace? Are you the initiator of things? Do you like to nurture people? Do people identify with you as the messenger? Oh, if you want to know what's going on, call so-and-so. Are you the tribe builder? One of our clients called herself this tribe builder, and I call it party planner, but it's really what the party could just be engaging people. Do you have that? I know that a lot of this applies to some of you. Are you the one that can be relied on for bringing people together? That's tremendous value. Are you the one that's teaching others? Are you the one that people go to when they need a really creative solution to a problem nobody can figure out? Or are you the one that's willing to experiment and try new things? So the one thing that you have to understand is these are the things that people will actually pay you for. They are part of your value. So when it comes to getting a job, look back and ask yourself, what is your value? And then think about ways that you can apply that value and actually get paid for it. That is what you want to be known as the go-to person for. This is how you build a sustainable careers. So the work in terms of trying to identify your value is very much about making the trip from here to here, connecting your head to your heart. And I'm not going to say that it's an easy one, but it's probably one of the most valuable journeys you will ever make in your life. And nobody can do this work for you. And when I started Higher Landing, I was actually very afraid to come out of the closet and use the word heart in business. But what I realized is that there is not one successful person on the planet that hasn't either consciously or unconsciously made the trip from here to here. But you have to give yourself permission to go there. And what that means is being brutally authentic and honest with yourself. Nobody else is going to judge you but you. So if you really want to do this work, it's about being honest with yourself. And I've coined this phrase about own your weirdness. And what that means is don't ever apologize for who you are, because this is how you distinguish yourself from others. This is how you identify your own unique career or life DNA, your purpose, your worth, your value. And every single one of you is bringing different value to the table. It's really important that you understand that. Every single one of you is extraordinary. But it's your job to figure out what is it that makes you so extraordinary, not somebody else's. Because if you're going to rely on somebody else to tell you what your value is, they're going to guess. And what's going to happen is they're probably going to guess wrong. So we had a client in our program. Wasn't sure if I should tell this story, but I think it's pretty relevant. And this isn't about to highlight race or differences that way or anything like that. This is just a really good example to demonstrate what I'm trying to say to you. We had a client in our program. He was a mechanical engineer from Mexico City. And he came into the program and he was so down on himself, and just a lovely guy. He had been in Canada for about 10 years and spoke perfect English, but he was extremely humble. And, I said, Sergio, what's wrong? What's the problem here? And he said, well, nobody wants to hire a Mexican. And I thought, goodness gracious, why would you say that? That is just ridiculous. And he said, well, it's true. And, this guy had so much going for him. He was a licensed auto mechanic in Mexico City. He had 20 people working for him. He had traveled around the world. He just had so much going for him. And I was so excited about taking him to market, as we call it. But he didn't believe in himself. He was in his own way. So finally I said, Sergio, I said, you gotta cut this out. I mean, this is what is blocking you from your own higher landing. And he is, because he had been unemployed for, about a year and a half when he came into our program. And so finally I said, Sergio, I said, you're being ridiculous. You can't change your name. You can't change where you're from. You can't change your parents, as much as sometimes we would like to. So just own it. So anyway, one day he came to class and he said, Jackie, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I could finish your program. And my heart just sunk, because this guy was such a beautiful soul. And I said, well, what happened? What's wrong? What did I do? He said, something I did. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, it was. And I thought, oh no, now what? And he said, well, I got a job. And I said, you're kidding. I said, how exciting is that? I said, tell me what happened. So as it turned out, he said later that he updated his LinkedIn profile, which is something we teach in our program, and he started to own his weirdness. He remembered this slide that I shared with him. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, Jackie, it pretty much killed me. But I put on my LinkedIn profile the fact that I was from Mexico City and I was fluent in I could speak Spanish. And I was a licensed auto mechanic and a blah, blah, blah. And he said, I pretty much died when I updated my profile, because I thought people were going to laugh. They were going to think I was some kook, his words. So anyway, what happened was, about 2 weeks after he updated his LinkedIn profile and he came out of the closet, so to speak, he got a call from an employer. And he said, Jackie, I just got back from the interview and they pretty much hired me on the spot. And I said, what, for what? Well, it turned out that they were an engineering company that was looking for an engineer that could speak Spanish. And when they found out that Sergio was actually from Mexico City, they pretty much fell over. They thought that they had hit the recruitment lottery, because the reason that they needed this person was because they had just landed a project, not just in Mexico, but in Mexico City. So when they found out on his LinkedIn profile that he was from there, he knew the lay of the land, and he was also a licensed auto mechanic, right? He was good with his hands. They pretty much just hired him on the spot. So he's now been there for well over 2 years. So this is this is just a really good example, I think, of, when I say own your weirdness, your life happens to you for a reason. Nothing in life happens by chance. And pay attention to those little little feelings that, those things, those little voices that are talking to you, and those passions and those interests, because that's your future talking to you. So when it comes to understanding your value, it really comes down to asking yourself, okay, well, tell me, Julia, who are you? Right? Susan, who are you? What is it that makes you different? What is it that makes you stand out? And it really comes down to this process. So just for a moment, you guys, I just want you to think of yourself, and I don't mean to dehumanize anyone, but I want you to think of yourself as though you were a product that was going to market. Okay, and really simply 3 steps. Number 1, you have to know what the product is. Number 2, it has to be packaged properly. And then the last thing you do is you go to market. Now, your market could be socially, it could be professionally for work, whatever that is. So the problem that most people have is that they don't know the product before they race to market. So in a job sense, what they're doing is they're spinning their resume out on social media, playing that job lottery, crossing their fingers, hoping that somebody's going to hire them. They are not ready. They don't know who they are. They don't know what their value is. And they're just crossing their fingers. I mean, that job lottery, you guys, especially since COVID started, is a real crapshoot. It is very dangerous because, and the odds of you actually getting calls back is very much diminished from the way it was before COVID. So when you think of these 3 steps, I want you to remember this. The first thing, I call it transition. You want to know what the product is. So who are you? What is it that makes you different, special, extraordinary? What is it that makes you unique? What is it that makes you stand out from everybody else? And I'm telling you, every single one of you has all kinds of features and benefits that nobody else has. It's just that nobody's really taught us to think this way about ourselves, or look at ourselves this way. So that's the very first step. I'm going to take you through a little model in a minute to figure that out. Secondly, you want to package the product up. But what we're really packaging here is not so much the product, you guys, but the output of the product. And the output of the product is your value. So how you can describe your value is ask yourself, how will my life or how will someone's life or someone's company be different with you in it? And if you can't answer that question, you're not going to be ready to go to market, because nobody's going to know what you should be the go-to person for. Nobody's going to know what kind of problems you can solve. Nobody's going to know what your value is to them. So this is why when we're talking about this second stage, we're talking about packaging your value. So in a career sense, we will teach you how to package it and package your value on LinkedIn, your social media profiles, resume, all of that sort of stuff. And what you really have to look for is or ensure is consistency of messaging. And this is especially important on social media because there's, if you're Facebook, I want to just warn you, guys, everything is transparent on social media. So if you're looking for a job and somebody sees something on Facebook that very much conflicts what you might have written on your resume or LinkedIn profile, already you've just lost credibility. So I'm just going to say that. In our case, in this second step, what we do is we go another step further. We have this really cool thing called the Grizzly Den. It's very much like TV's Dragon's Den, where our clients have a chance to pitch themselves to a panel of decision makers that they don't know. So if any of you are interested in actually watching a live Grizzly Den, we do them 2 times a month. Please just reach out to me. I'll leave you my coordinate and my contact information afterwards, and you're welcome to attend an event. They're really cool. So the last step in the process is marketing, and this is where you're actually going to go to market. But when it comes to marketing, what I want you to think about is not necessarily where you want to go to market, but who will appreciate your value. That is your target market. So from a job sense, most people end up spinning their resume everywhere. They're not thinking about the other person or whether or not they're going to add value. They just want to get their resume out to as many people as possible. And that's the complete waste of time. So please remember these 3 steps. So the first step, and this is a model that I wanted to show you. I created this mainly for careers, but this is a fabulous way for you to help you to identify what your value is. So on the left side of this pyramid, this is actually a change management model, by the way. We're going to move you from the stages of transition all the way up to transformation. So at the very bottom of this pyramid, we have survival and crisis. So what that means is that if you're going through something really serious in your life, like a death, a divorce, whatever, you break a bone, you get COVID, you want to take a time out because you need to find some stability in your life first. So that's where you have to give yourself a break. Now, assuming you're not in that state of crisis, where you should start is on that abilities and skills level. And here I would say is where 95% of people are stuck. And the reason I say that is that they are identifying themselves solely on the basis of their hard skills. Now, sure, we all have them. Our mothers have them. Whether it was taking care of the household or working on a farm or being a teacher, whatever those are, you guys, but those are just, they form a part of you. They are not your entire value. So what's really important is that you don't identify yourself just as your hard skills, but you also have to look at your soft skills. So your soft skills are those personality traits that have been with you since the get-go. They're things that nobody will ever take away from you. So your ability to make someone laugh, your ability to nurture someone, your ability to think out of the box. These are all soft skills. So when you're doing an inventory to determine what your value is, this is an essential part of it, but there's a lot further way to go. So that's the first step. The next step is where we start helping you to connect your head to your heart. And you ask yourself, what are your interests and passions? What are those things that you really love to do? What is it that gets you excited to jump out of bed in the morning? And it's not because that's what you're going to be doing for work or for the rest of your life. It's understanding the why behind it. So let me just give you an example. We had a client in our program. He had just been laid off from his job. He had been there for well over a decade. And when he came into the program, he was in a really bad state. He was in a negative mindset. And I felt my heart was just bleeding for him because when he got laid off, he was blindsided. He did not see it coming. And he thought he was doing a really good job. So this was a real surprise for him. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to make him feel better and I'm going to take him up this pyramid. And so I thought, okay, Jim, tell me, what are your passions? What are you passionate about? And he said, I hate that word. I thought, okay, fine. Well, let's call it something different. What are your interests? What are your hobbies? What is it that gets you, what do you like to do in your spare time? He looked at me and he said, nothing. I thought, okay, now what am I going to do? So I said, okay, Jim, I said, tell me. I said, what is it that, what did you do on the weekend? Last weekend? Oh, well, I was gardening with my wife. And I said, well, that's interesting. I said, so you like gardening, do you? And he said, oh, come on, no, I didn't say that. I said, okay, let me ask you a different question, Jim. I said, what is it that you like about gardening? Well, it's kind of creative and I don't know, maybe it's kind of nurturing or something. And I said, oh, so nurturing is important to you, is it? And he said, oh, come on, no, I didn't say that. And so I thought, okay, let me put it, his whole mind was at his last job. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take him there. So I said, okay, Jim, let's go back to your last job. And I said, can you think of a time where you might have nurtured something where it resulted in some sort of a win? And he thought about it. And all of a sudden there was this dead silence. And I thought, what the heck is going on? So I looked over at him and all of a sudden I could see the poor guy's lips start to quiver. All of a sudden he put his head up and he said, I can think of something. He said, when I look back at my last job, it's like everybody who worked for me went on to do greater things than I did. One became the president of this division, one became a VP here, one person started his own company, and all of a sudden Jim broke down in tears. And he said, I had no idea that I had any value whatsoever. And I said, but Jim, let me ask you a question. I said, did your boss know that about you? He said, what do you mean? I said, did your boss know that you were the builder of these amazing people, these amazing leaders? That company probably wouldn't be where it is without you. You're like this kingmaker. And he put his head down and he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, Jim, I said, you know what? I hate to rub salt into wounds, but that wasn't their fault. He said, what do you mean? I said, that is your job. That was your fault. When it comes to managing your life and your career, you guys, it is your responsibility to make sure that you educate everybody around you, above you, and beneath you as to what your value is. Because that is how you build an unstoppable, sustainable career. And that is what you want to be known as the go-to person for. So the more people know that you're the go-to person for whatever, building superstars within an organization, or whatever that might, nurturing people, making people feel better, whatever that is. Suddenly word gets out, and then if you do lose your job, then suddenly they start to advocate for you. So that's a really important part. So ask yourself, what is it that you really love to do and why? And then ask yourself why again and why again. It's sort of like peeling back the layers of an onion. We do this in our branding workshops, and it's a lot of work, but it's a huge gift for you for helping to figure out what your value is. The next level on the pyramid is your values and beliefs, and this is asking yourself what's important to you. The reason this is important, and this applies both to employers as well as families and any other kind of relationship, is that if what's important to you is not important to who you're working for or with, or living with for that matter, you're not going to be happy or successful. So please remember that. The next is your identity. You guys, when you're out there talking about your value, you've got 5 seconds. You don't have 5 minutes to tell them. So what I want to encourage you to do is to figure out what your value is in a word or two. I know this is really, really hard work, but I'll tell you, it's one of the best investment you can make probably in your life is to figure out what your value is and be able to articulate it in as short of span as possible, fewest number of words as possible. Anyway, then we get up to the top level of the pyramid, which is your purpose. And that's helping you to get clear on, well, okay, so now you've gone through all of this. Well, what is it that I really should be doing with my life or my career versus what I can do? So usually what happens is when people go through this process, their confidence and their clarity skyrockets. It goes through the roof because suddenly they realize that they have all of these features and benefits that they never really thought about before. So this is a really good place for you to start in terms of identifying your value. I just wanted to mention, these are some of the top soft skills of 2021. These are things that people will actually pay you for: creativity, collaboration, learnability, multicultural awareness, and social skills. And I'm sure all of you have got at least one or more of them. So what to do? Well, know your value and believe it. If you don't believe it, nobody else is going to. And then you share it. I always say you have to know it first. You got to believe it in your heart before you start talking about it. Otherwise, nobody's going to believe you. And please do those IPs. Ask others, what is keeping you up at night? What is, if there was one thing that I could take off, or that you could take off your plate that would let you sleep at night, what would that be? If you had the ideal person in the role, in this role, what would Nirvana look like to you 3 months from now? Right? So whatever that is, find out what their pain points are, and not pain points 6 months from now, pain points today. What is in there? What is bothering them today? Employers especially want to hire people that can solve something for them today. And COVID has just accelerated the pace of change, which is why it's even more important. And then this is a great thing to think about. How can you help somebody that you'll never meet again? I love that. Think about that. How can you help somebody that you will never meet again? Very powerful. Future of work, just wanted to highlight a few things. We're in a time where you have to really take control of your own career management and life management for that matter. Nobody's going to do this work for you. We're being rewarded for our value versus how loyal we are. And career security is replacing job security. And the reason I say that, the only way to have career security is to know your value or your brand or your secret sauce or whatever it is that you want to call it, because that is the one thing that nobody will ever take away from you. A job will be pulled from you in a heartbeat. Knowing your value stays with you for life. So please remember it. Invest some time in figuring out what it is. It's one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself. We're seeing a lot more people pivoting their career, and especially that's important, when you're selling yourself to a job that you've got no experience in, but you're just, that you can add value. Well, you better be clear on your value, because that is how people are getting, our clients are pivoting to new careers. They don't have the job work experience. They don't have the industry experience. They don't have the skills, but they're providing value. So this is a whole new way of selling yourself. There are no more jobs for life, and you have to be able to demonstrate learnability and soft skills too. And this is probably one of the best times ever to create your own job. So we're coming to the end here. I just wanted to mention that I'm offering for Lean In members a 15% discount to any of our programs. You can go onto our website and see them. A few that I will highlight a few. One is a transferable skills workshop. It also includes a really thorough aptitude test. So if anyone's trying to figure themselves out, that's a great place to start. Another one is our flagship branding workshop called Knowing Your Brand. It's a 2-day workshop. The first day is 6 hours. The next day is about 3. And we go through a lot more of the information that I've shared with you today in a lot more detail. And then, of course, we have a boot camp, and we call it our COVID Career Boot Camp, which we've had phenomenal success with. I don't know how many hundred people we just launched it last summer. And people have been landing very quickly, even before they finish the program. So I just wanted to mention. We also go into helping you to unpeel your value and understand your worth and all of that sort of thing. Finally, I just wanted to mention, we do have some free information sessions. So if anyone is interested in learning a little bit more, there's a few information sessions. You can just go onto our website at higherlanding.com. They're 90 minutes long. One is on March the 1st, the other March 16th. So I just wanted to mention, this is Mountain Standard Time. I've also shared with Julia an exercise that we use in our clinics, in our practice clinics, that I call appreciative inquiry. And it is a really great exercise to help you to start the process of figuring out what your value is on the basis of thinking of a time in your life or your career or whatever, where you've been on fire, and unpeeling that particular story to figure out what your value is. So the exercise is recommended that you do it with somebody else, but you don't have to. You can also do it by yourself. But I think Julia is going to be sharing that with you at the end here. Yeah, and so our boot camp, it's 10 weeks long. All right, so any questions?
Thanks, Jackie. That was awesome. There was definitely a lot of value in that. And I really love that you let us know that soft skills are so important, even though they're definitely something we don't really consider as part of like a hiring process. So it was really cool to hear how important those soft skills are, because we are really born with most of them. So
I know, I was going to mention too, Julia, on our website, we have some of the recordings of people that have pitched to the Grizzlies in the Grizzly Den. And last week, there was one, we did post it to our website, a very, very well-educated young lady. And one of the Grizzlies said that the reason she got certified and the reason that he was so impressed wasn't because of her plethora of hard skills. It was because of her soft skills and how engaging she was and how much of an interest she took in other people, and her sense of humor. So these are really it's becoming far more important than it ever has in certainly the world of work.
Yeah, that's great. We do have a few questions, and then I've seen a couple pop up in the chat. So I'll just start with this first one here.
Sure.
So how do you brag without feeling like you're being boastful? And how do you show value when a majority of your role is managing a team versus doing work?
Okay, so it all starts with IP, you guys. Like I wouldn't be going around telling everybody, hey, well, I'm a nurturer. I'm really funny. I can make you laugh. Whatever that is. You want to be able to gauge your audience, but it's really important that you educate them as to what your value is. But the best way to do that is to do an IP on them first. So ask them, what are their pain points? What's keeping them up at night? What is it that's on their mind, that if you could take it off their mind, what would it be? And then sell your value in that way. Well, listen, I've got some background in handling really difficult people. And, I've done that in many of my previous jobs. I'd love to help you with that. And, if it comes up. So once again, it is your job. It's your responsibility to educate others on what your value is, but you don't have to be boastful. It's not about, hey, I'm so great and wonderful. No. Your value, as I was showing you examples before you guys, it's just the facts. What is it that you have a consistent track record of doing or of serving? How have you served others? Well, who are you known as the go-to person for in your families? That'll give you a really good clue as to what your value is. Are you the one that's going to get things off the ground? And then it's up to you to figure out how best to educate others on what that is. But it's not being boastful at all. It's about being educational, educating others.
That's awesome. How do I feel confident? I guess this kind of is similar, but how do I feel confident and show confidence, but not seem like an arrogant woman? Because there is that whole, difference between a man being confident and a woman being confident. So maybe you could just, let us know how to do that without seeming.
Well, you can't feel anything unless you believe it, first of all. So, and believing, let's say, if you're talking about being arrogant, I mean, arrogant is not a value as far as I'm concerned. Arrogant, maybe people are arrogant because they happen to know a lot of things. Well, why do they know a lot? Because they're really smart. Well, what are they really smart about? Well, it's because they read a lot of books. Oh, so they're really well read. So they're a great resource of information. They're not arrogant. So then let others know that, hey, listen, I'm a great resource for whatever information that is. So it really starts with knowing what your value is and then buying it in here. And that's one of the biggest problems that people have, is that they don't know what their value is. Or somebody will say, oh yeah, Julia, you're really good with people or whatever. And you say, oh yeah, okay. But you don't buy it. And if you don't buy it yourself, nobody else is going to.
That's great. Sorry, I had to have a drink of water there. It was like that weird time you stopped and I was like, oh, no.
Sorry, I'll take one too.
Yeah, that's great. How do I help others know my worth without going on and on and on about me, and yet sharing my talent and asking for business is important too?
Right. So it goes back to IPs, you guys. The best way to share your value is to, first of all, you have to educate them on what your value is. And as I've been giving you examples of what your value is, your value isn't being the smartest person in the room. Your value isn't knowing more than everybody else. Your value is far deeper than that. And once you know, it's your responsibility to make sure that others know that, hey, listen, this is how you can serve them. If they need somebody that, say, knows a lot of information about certain topics, or is really good with dealing with stressed out people, or is really good with making people feel better, then, hey, listen, I'm the person, call me in, happy to help. It's really that simple. But another way to do that too is initiate a conversation about somebody's IP. What's keeping you up at night? What's important to you? And what are your pain points? It's really that simple. And then from that, then you can bring in your value conversation. That's
great. We have a couple questions coming in from the chat, which is awesome. And I just I'm going to try to read through all of them, but this one first. You talk about value and passion. Are they interchangeable?
Oftentimes, the way that they're interchangeable is that if you ask yourself what you're passionate about and the why, sometimes you can get to your value from that, from asking. So ask yourself, you guys, right now, what is it that you're really passionate about? What is it that you like to do? What is it that makes you lose track of time? What is it that really gets you excited to leap out of bed in the morning? What is something that you really look forward to? Then ask yourself, well, why is that? Why? Why do I love my dog so much? Why do I love travel so much? Why is it that I love Italian cooking? Then ask yourself, okay, well, why is that? And why is that? And why is that? We had an example of a cook. He was an engineer who loved to bake. And the reason that he loved to bake, and he got to his value from asking that passion question. And the reason that he liked to bake was because he liked to serve other people. And he liked to make people feel good. And so he had his own Instagram page, and he was this most amazing baker. He should have been on one of those baking shows, but he made the most beautiful cakes. And the reason for it was because he was It had nothing to do with the fact that he liked to cook. It was the experience that he gave others. So you know what happened? He went from, I don't know, he was doing something very technical in an engineering role. He ended up in a customer service role for a telecommunications company, and it's a customer service leadership role. He was so happy because you know what? He was being paid every day to make people feel good, make people feel better. He was serving others. And so this is why it's a great question, great place to start is ask yourself, what is it that you're passionate about? And then why? But then why again? And why do you like that? And almost until it's sort of like peeling back the layers of an onion, because eventually you're going to get to the heart of what your value really is.
Yeah, that's really good, because I know sometimes I always know I'm really passionate about stuff, but I'm not always entirely sure why in the moment. So that's definitely something I'm going to start paying a little bit.
They're hard questions.
Yeah. Okay, great. Another question that came in from the chat. Thinking about the client who didn't let his managers know how good he was at nurturing his team, speaking up about our skills and value is challenging for a lot of women, especially when we face likability bias. If we seem overly competent or like we're bragging, how do we recommend that women talk about our value or their value?
You guys, I don't think that we should treat ourselves any different than anybody else. And I've worked with men most of my career. You know, we have a responsibility to take control of our own careers and manage them ourselves. And how you do it, it's about having some emotional intelligence to have those conversations. And all it is really is educating. Once again, it goes back to education, educating others on what you want to be known as the go-to person for. And eventually, let me tell you, word is going to get around. You'll get promoted. You'll get moved to different departments. You'll have opportunities be presented to you that you never imagined possible. And oftentimes, we manage our careers by happenstance, or actually don't manage them. And we get moved around because we have some boss that sees greatness in us that maybe we don't even see. And the next thing you know, that boss goes or is transferred or leaves, and suddenly our career falls flat. And it's because the new boss doesn't see the value that the old one did. So then are you just going to leave? No. Take control of your own career and try to take the bull by the horns and try to look at it rather than being boastful. And this is the awkward thing. I mean, we have to do this in our personal lives as well. But it's about, just think about it as educating somebody on what you want to be known as the go-to person for, or what you can be of service with. That's a better way to put it. So you're not being boastful. Hey, if ever you need help in blah, 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 just maybe keep me in mind. Oh, I didn't realize that you could do that. Yeah, no, I've got a lot of experience, blah, blah, blah. Right? Great.
I think this next question actually segues kind of perfectly with this one while we're talking about bosses. I recently started a new job, and my employer is familiar that my starting salary was a large jump from my previous role. In conjunction with the COVID environment, how can I build a mindset and present that confidence to my boss that I'm worth an annual rate when my time comes up?
Perfect question. So first of all, I just want to say as an aside, we don't go to work for companies, we go to work for people. So there are some fabulous people in companies we would never dream of working in, and vice versa. So the first thing you have to do is, ask yourself if you are aligned to the one that you're working for, and if that person appreciates your value. But it's your job to educate that person on what your value is. So when it comes to justifying a pay increase or a raise or whatever, make sure that you're doing IPs. IPs are the best way for you to demonstrate your value. Find out every day, and the most successful people I have worked with have done this. You just find out, so what's happening today? What's going on? How is your day going? That's a great way to start an IP. What are your pain points today? How is your day going? They're going to tell you. And so when you start getting them to open up as to what their important pain points are, you're going to be the first to be able to solve them. And if you can't solve them, maybe you can find the other resources too. Suddenly you're going to become indispensable to that person. They're not going to be able to figure out why. And it's just because you're taking an interest. to be able to do it, an effective IP requires curiosity. And I always refer to my curiosity quotient of, it's a 50-50 rule. 50% about asking the right questions and 50% about caring about the answer. So if you do not care about somebody's true pain points, then don't ask the question in the beginning to begin with, because it's just not going to matter. You're going to be wasting your time.
Great. I'm just wondering, Jackie, if you could just quickly maybe give us a little insight into exactly like what IP, not necessarily what it is, but how to like use it more like on the daily. I think some people just need a little bit of maybe clarity on IP and how to use it in your day to day.
So how was your day today, Julia?
It was really great, actually.
So what was, if there was one thing that you wish didn't happen to you today, what would that have been? Now let me ask you a different question. What is there, if there was one thing that would have made your day go a lot smoother, what do you think that would have been?
Maybe getting up a little bit earlier than I did this morning.
So is getting up earlier important to you?
Not really.
So is that a pain point, would you say? You're not a morning person.
I don't know if it's a pain point, but I don't really like to sleep in all the time. And I just feel like you get behind on your day when you do.
So, doing an IP is just taking an interest in somebody, right? Okay. So tell me, Julia, so, how, honestly, the best way to start an IP, how's your day? How are things going? How are things going? Oh, really well. Oh yeah, for everything going really well. Well, almost everything. Right? Well, what is it? Like if there's one thing that you could improve today, what might that be? Right? Okay. So there's no right or wrong. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to ask IP questions. I mean, if you're going for a job interview, a really good one is, what would success look like to you with the ideal person in the role? Right? What would your perfect day look like to you? If all the stars aligned and everything was going perfectly, what would that be? And that's the essence of the appreciative inquiry exercise that I have that I've shared with you. Great.
We have a few more questions. We'll try to get through as many of them as we can. So I've heard it's become practice to use your brand and address your values on your resume. A lot of the time, this is just highlighted as a few words bolded under your name. How do you sell your value more on a resume while still showcasing your relevant experience?
You guys think about how you're gonna make someone else's life easier. How are you gonna serve others? What is your value to someone else? And it's not about just putting a bunch of kitschy words on a resume. In our workshops, so we teach this. We get people to put we call them their wow factors or their North Star. They're words that would best describe 3 or 4 words that would best describe their brand and their value. And so what I would do is I would put those words right underneath your name and then make sure that you further explain them in your little profile paragraph. So in your profile paragraph, if you really want to blow someone away, follow that pyramid and make sure that every level of that pyramid is addressed in your profile paragraph. So including, like your skills, hard and soft, your passions, what is it that you like? And then tie those passions to the why that has made you so successful, right? And then go up from there.
Great, yeah, because sometimes it can be hard to express how awesome you are when it is in writing.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Another question that came through. Sometimes I feel I need to try different stuff to actually figure out what my value or passion is. And sometimes I enjoy doing something for a couple months and then I kind of get bored with it. So does that mean that values are not constant?
So I would ask you, why is it that you get bored with things? Maybe you need a lot of stimulus, right? Maybe you're just not, you haven't unpeeled your value effectively or articulated it. And so ask yourself, if you're really excited about something, what is it that's exciting you about it? And maybe you're somebody that likes to start, I get bored really easily. And the reason for that is that because I like to start things. I mean, what part of my value is an initiator, right? I like to get things going. I'm the one that's going to get the party started, but don't ask me to clean up. I can clean up, but that's not really where my sweet spot is. So ask yourself, why is it that you're getting bored? Well, maybe it's because, you're more the person that's going to get things off the ground and get things started than finish them. That's okay. There's real value. Not everybody has got that gift.
So then, to segue into another question that was just asked in the chat, can your values change like as you evolve or as the environment changes, et cetera?
Yeah. How you articulate them might change, but your value really doesn't. And if you're finding that your value is constantly changing, you haven't really got to the root of what your value really is. So for instance, people say, okay, well, Jackie, what's your value? And I say, well, I'm a catalyst. Well, what does that mean? Well, and I say, well, wherever I go, things either move forward or they blow up. There's no in between. And it's true. My personal life and my professional life, I blow through barriers. And so honestly, wherever I go, it's like that's something that follows me. So rather than try to fight it and try to be this little sheep that just, follows instructions, I'm going to own my own weirdness. And I tell people, this is really, really what you're going to get. And I do make things happen. But, do I really like all the details and the follow through and all that? No. I like to hire people and put other people in place to make all that stuff happen. I mean, I can do it. A lot of us can. But it's finding out where your sweet spot is, where your true value is. What is it that you're going to naturally congregate to? I love that. Ask yourself, what would you do at a house party? What role would you play at a house party? It's one of the questions that I ask in the program. Are you the one that's going to, to invite everybody, get everybody, or get all the food laid out? Are you going to be the one that's going to be socializing with everyone? Are you going to be the one helping clean up? That will give you clues as to what your value is. I know that they seem silly, but it's really, you can find your value in real life situations by just asking yourself the right questions.
What if you do all those things at a house party?
Then my question, this is a really good question. I say, okay, well, where would you be in the life cycle of a project? I mean, it's funny, we work with a lot of project managers and they say, well, I can do it all. And I said, well, if you say that you can do it all, you haven't identified a high enough level of self-awareness to go to market. You don't know yourself as well as you think, because regardless of the fact that you can do it all, there is going to be one piece of that project that you are just going to be so excited to leap after and to dig into. And where is that? Right? So, and it's something that's going to probably come really naturally to you. It's not that you can't do it all. Yeah, that's the bottom of the pyramid, what you can do. But ask yourself, okay, well, really, what is it that you really should be doing? Maybe it's managing. Maybe it's coming up with the idea, right? But ask yourself, these are hard questions. And there's a lot of soul searching that goes into to identifying what your value is. It's not easy work.
Yeah, for sure. Another great question that came through on the chat. This person was saying it's become very clear that they need to get to know themselves. So what is the best way for them to start that process? Pyramid.
Go back to that pyramid, you guys. Go back to this pyramid and ask yourself the questions. Ask yourself what can you do? Do an inventory, hard skills and soft skills. And don't just limit yourself to the things that you've done at work. Look at your personal life as well. And then ask yourself, your passions and your interests. What is it that you really love to do? What is it that gets you excited to jump out of bed in the morning? And then why? Why? So in our program, we have coaches that you work with to kind of extract this out of you. But for now, this is where I'd start. And then your values, what's important to you? Then ask yourself, well, why is your family so important? Why are your dogs so important? Why is freedom so important? Why is autonomy so important? Right? Ask yourself. So you can coach yourself and then say, okay, well, now that I know all of this, well, how would I describe me in a word or two? It's not easy. Forces you to think. And the idea is not to come up with the perfect word. It's the process of self-discovery. And this takes time, you guys. So that would be my recommendation.
Great. Yeah, I love this pyramid. I think it's a really good thing to sort of ingrain into our brains for sure. Okay, I'll just end with a couple more questions here. What strategies can you share to overcome or quiet the imposter syndrome?
You have to acknowledge who you are and don't make apologies for it. So when you think about why someone feels like they don't belong, well, it's because they don't know themselves really, or they do know themselves and they haven't accepted it. That's a big part of it. Self-acceptance is a big part of the self-discovery process. And so what that means is not making apologies for who you are. That would be my primary answer to that question, Julia.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Someone was wondering what the code was for one of your sessions.
Yes. Lean In 2021.
Perfect.
So that is, I think, effective until the end of May.
Okay, great.
So March, April, yeah.
And then I think
that applies to any of our programs on the website. So if you take the boot camp, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for offering that to our audience today. And I think this is a really great question to end on. If you were to leave us with one key message, what would it be?
Know your value. Invest in understanding what your value is. That's the one thing nobody will ever take away from you, you guys. And once you understand that, it will take you through the roughest waters imaginable in life. Nobody can rip it away from you. Nobody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie. That was just awesome. And, you know, you answered the questions so brilliantly and great. I think there's a lot of great value people are going to leave here tonight with. So we'll just, I'll just wrap up again by saying thank you and then turning it over to Susan to end us off for tonight.
Thank you, Julia. It's been an honor.